Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Middle Georgia Spotlight. I'm your host, Jack Ellis. We're glad to have you with us. We want to thank our sponsors this week and every week, Caduceus Medicine, J. Franklin Automotives, and, of course, the good people here at WMUB Channel 38 at Mercer University. And this week in the Spotlight is Commissioner, shall I say, Mayor Pro Tem, Al Tillman. He's a commissioner at Bibb County Commission, but he's the mayor pro tem. He's the second person in charge of the city. I'd like to welcome you to our program.
Thank you, Mr. Former Mayor Ellis, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, glad to have you with us. And of course, there's so much I want to talk to you about. There's so many things going on. You're in the budget cycle, blight, and everything else that's going on in the city. But the main thing I wanted to talk to you about is something that one of your initiatives, the vision that you had, and that is to decriminalize, if you will, cannabis, marijuana, Mary Jane, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So you led that fight, and just last night, we're taping here on a Wednesday, just last night, Tuesday, you were able to get the 5 votes. So first of all, congratulations, and secondly, what led you down that path?
Well, thank you so much, sir, and it was a battle of just wanting to make sure we heard from everyone and gave people an opportunity to voice their opinions, whether yay or nay. I tell you, I was watching the cannabis oil fight for the last 3 years in the state legislature, and just watching those kids, and it just broke your heart that I just was educated on the importance of medical marijuana and things of that nature and what it can do for you, because all our life we grew up being told that it's just a bad drug for you. It's a bad drug. And to find out that it heals so many different ailments in your life was just a blessing. And so I'd ask one of our local delegation leaders if they would sponsor legislation to let's decriminalize or reduce the jail time and fines, because this was harming and hurting so many young boys and girls in our community that was trying to pursue a job, and she said yes, and so closer to crossover day, we were also fighting the OLAS, trying to get it passed, and I never asked them about the marijuana. So like about a week before or days before crossover day in the state legislature, when you can get bills passed, I called and I was like, what's the status? And I was told that somebody else was handling the bill, because we're trying to get it done for the whole state of Georgia, and therefore it would also affect Macon. And so when nothing was done, I actually went to our local attorney, and I reached out to Virgil and said, I think it's time that we move on this. Nothing was done in the legislature, and so let's move on it. And so we did, and we were able to secure not one, but 2 other commissioners, Schlesinger and Lucas, commissioners, and they got on board. Now, I will be honest and tell you that, we wanted to make sure in talking to the mayor really wasn't on board with this, and he had a lot of questions about state patrol and state law and all of this. And so once we started talking to our sheriff and our solicitor, our district attorney, never in a community where the 9 previous municipalities who had this law passed, where the sheriff, the solicitor general, and the district attorney were all on board, along with at least 4 commissioners. And so Commissioner Burt Bivens really was the swing vote. He had some concerns about municipal court and the fines and so forth. So we just gave it a while to have conversations with everybody. And I think once we secured that, he was satisfied, and that we would just deal with the sheriff, because we really do have a decent sheriff in our community. Yeah. And we decided that outside of the courts, the sheriff department is the first line of defense, or that those come in contact with, that say if we work on a relationship with the sheriff, we can better educate those men and women who are stopping and pulling over young folks for marijuana charges. That's changing their lives. And you think about, somebody gets you pull somebody over and they're headed to work, and you smell marijuana, and you say, can I search your car? And they said, no, I'm going to work. And then he calls the dog again, the K9, and K9 takes a hit, and they say, oh, we got to search your car. And the kid has an attitude, and he finds a marijuana joint or something in the car. and now he wants to arrest him. The person has an attitude, and they wants to arrest him. He's going to impound the car. Now he's missed his job for 2 days, and now he's back in a life of just disbelief and mad and crime, and so
very expensive.
and you just never get out of the system. And so, if we can prevent people from going to jail for it initially, then I think you can help change and save a lot of lives.
Well, I think one thing that you did well, and I want to commend you on this, that you reached out to the community. You had public hearings. You just didn't 4 people get in the room and decide you wanted to hear from the community at large, and you heard from them. So based on what you heard, you still, at the end of the day, thought that the pro would outweigh the con, and you had to move forward with it.
You know, I tell you, and I haven't revealed this, but I went to my dentist. My dentist, you got to trust your dentist. And he and I were talking about it. He actually convinced me that it was just bad overall for young folks and so forth. And it just bothered me so much. And I was thinking about it, and I said, well, when I looked at it, I said, well, the good of helping these young folks outweigh the bad of what he was thinking, as far as we don't want kids to get in trouble. If I tell my son or daughter, don't do nothing bad or illegal, I don't want him to do it. And if he do it, here are the consequences. So I had to look at that, and I thought about that as well. But in the end, you know, in fighting criminal justice reform, we have to continue to start somewhere. We are living what I call a Donald Trump world. And so where we can enact and change laws as it relates to the criminal justice system on a local level, I think we do it. I think we take the initiative, and we do it because for 50 plus years, as long as I've been living, people have been fighting criminal justice reform. It just has not been fair across the board as it relates to minorities.
So you see this as part and parcel of that overall?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, a couple of years ago, we fought with an initiative called Ban the Box, and worked with the Justice Department out of, we met them, they came from D.C., met them in Atlanta. I worked with the local union up there and Senator Nan, and we were hopeful, but President Obama's term was coming to an end. He had about 8 months left, and we just didn't think he would what we call ban the box,
right,
which is an initiative that say on government applications that you don't have to answer the question, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Because what happens is, in most cases, if you be honest and say yes, they'll throw your application in trash. Well, what we were finding out is if a person had committed a crime 20 years ago, he's married, he's gone to school, he's changed his life, he don't get a chance to get in front of that employer and say, hey, I was a teenager then. That was 15, 20 years ago. Let me tell you what I'm doing now. He or she is prejudged and the application is thrown in the trash. With Ban the Box, it's no longer on the application of have you ever been convicted of a crime or felony or what have you. And so you get a chance to sit in front of someone and share and tell your story and let them judge you based on who you are today, not who you were many years ago.
We're talking with Commissioner Al Tillman, who's Mayor Pro Tem here in Macon and Bibb County, because we're seeing throughout the Middle Georgia area. And recently he led the charge to decriminalize marijuana, which passed by 5-4 vote in the Bibb County Commission. And those of you who are watching the Middle Georgia Spotlight, I want to ask you to, if you go to our YouTube channel, Middle Georgia Spotlight, I would ask you to do one thing for me, 2 things. Give us a like and subscribe to it. We, we've been on the air over a year now. We have a lot of hits on those where we put our program, in addition to being here on Channel 112 and the other cable systems throughout the mid-state area. We're also on YouTube, the Middle Georgia Spotlight. So go there and look at it. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to us. Now back to now you got the 5 votes. The mayor has to sign it, or he can veto it. What are your Now, maybe when this show airs, he will have already signed it or vetoed it. But what's your gut telling you? And based on the politics, what is it telling you?
I don't think it's a hardship as far as the mayor. I don't think. I think he has 7 days to sign it, or just automatically,
Become law without his signature,
becomes
yeah.
law. Yes, sir. And so we're just hopeful. I think the staff, and there was a poll out with 75+% of the community supporting the bill. You got your local district attorney, your sheriff, your solicitor. So I mean, it's just a no-brainer that overwhelmingly the community supports it. 10 municipalities support it. I think the sheriff has said to folks in 5 years he think the state of Georgia will legalize marijuana. So, it's a new wave. It's a new era. People tend to catch on sometimes later than others. And I think here in Macon-Bibb County, we're on the right path to do some great things and continue to make some things happen.
Speaking of great things, we talked enough about pot now, not enough about it because it's a big thing, and it
really
deserves the attention that it has gotten because it has destroyed a lot of young lives.
That's right.
They had no idea how it was going to affect them.
And I would just say this. It's still illegal. We encourage kids not to do drugs,
right,
and not to smoke it. I mean, medical-wise, yes, but it's still
But
an
if you
illegal
do,
substance.
we're not going to throw you in the slammer for
Absolutely,
what you said, destroy
It's not going to ruin your life.
Yeah. Now, the big thing that's coming up now, last year was all headlines as to what happened with this budget. We were going to close libraries. We were going to stop the buses from running. A lot of people were very upset. We're back in the budgetary process. You're number 2 man here. You're the mayor pro tem. Will we see a tax increase? Will we see services decrease? Or are we out of the woods, so to speak, on that?
I will say that we're out of the woods, and let me tell you why. People don't realize that not only Macon-Bibb County, but a lot of folks have taken a hit because of online sales. And you're not sales tax, and you're not able to collect sales taxes. So the state of Georgia changed that, and so now we have a surplus. And so we're now talking and working on how to give employees, if we're not going to do a raise, how do we give them a bonus? How do we give them additional holidays? And under Commissioner Virgil Watkins' leadership, he's a numbers guy. He's the chairman of finance, and I think they're doing a wonderful job. And so you can expect that there will not be a tax increase. We're going to toe the line on everything, and you will possibly see a surplus in us working to try and give folks a bonus at least.
Okay, no tax increase, but no service cuts either. We're not going to cut any services
Not
to
going to
balance
cut
the budget.
any services. That's
Okay.
right. Everything will pretty much stay the same in services as you've been getting so far.
So is this last year's funding, or will the Transfer Authority, for instance, they had to cut, will you see an increase in their funding, or basically what it was last year?
Yeah, well, I think we're giving the Transit Authority their funding back because whatever for instance, if we give the Transit Authority $300,000, they get a match of $300,000 from the federal government. So we have to be mindful that if we take away $100,000, then the federal government just took away $100,000. So with our transit system is very vital, and I wish Macon-Bibb citizens would take the initiative to ride the transit to see. Atlanta lives and thrives and encourages, and a lot of places on riding transit. But in Macon-Bibb County, we tend sometimes to just look at it as
a place for poor people.
For poor people, but it's for the working class as well. And in New York,
don't want to drive their
Atlanta,
car. Just put your bike on the front of it and go places.
We look at it differently, and so I think if more people begin to ride the bus and just realize sometimes within a block of your home or your business, you're just being dropped off, and it could save you time and gas and money.
Yeah. Getting back, speaking of money, you mentioned the OLOS. For people who don't know what that is, the other local option sales tax.
That's right.
In other words, in addition to a penny, you could have gotten 8 cents. That didn't fly.
That didn't.
So we'll let that go. But what you did get passed, you got a penny for the convention, hotel motel. Tell us how that's going to be divided.
Yeah, hotel motel tax is an additional penny on beds or folks that's coming in here sleeping in. We looked at it, and we're going to probably accumulate up to $600,000. And so that's part of the bonus that we see, where more money can go into the general fund, and we could use that extra penny on attracting folks that's coming to town through the Convention and Visitors Bureau, our museums, our Douglas Theater, and things that bring folks, our cultural things, to town. And so it's going to help in that aspect, so we don't have to dip in what we call our savings account, which is our general fund, to fund those things. And so that's going to help, and I think that was overdue. And it's sort of why we didn't get the OLA. I would have preferred the OLAs, because we would have received 28 million, but folks were just having heartburns and not realizing that, sometimes, we don't often raise taxes, but taxes pay for everything. And so a lot of times your tax dollars go toward all your services. And so if we had gotten that OLAS, I used to say even my daughter or son could go into the store, they're paying into the OLAS. People come in and traveling to Macon Bibb that work here but don't live here, I'll be paying into the OLAS. Yeah. But and that takes a burden off property owners. Because,
so you think people threw the baby out with the water?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because the onus is on property owners. Property owners have got to, are having to pay all the burden. But if you had done an OLAS, the OLAS would have mean everybody paid into the penny. The little baby, everybody, the people coming from out of town, the people that come here work, use our services, but leave here and go back to their home, they would have been paying into the OLAS. But essentially, property owners are footing the whole bill, and I still think we need to. And I think before we 2020 that people will begin to see that we're going to probably change and reduce some of those taxes as well. Hopefully, with these more beds that's coming, and with this penny tax, this hotel motel tax as well.
Yeah. Speaking of taxes, Mr. Tillman, there's something that's going on in this town. Now, you all, the tax assessors comes under your purview. Of course, independent appraisers do not. But what's happening in Macon, and it's been brought to my attention, I've had a couple people on this program talk about it, and I'm going to ask you about it. In certain sectors of the city, as a result of the big turn down in 09, 08, real estate prices were depressed. They're coming back in North Macon and some of the other more prosperous part of our city. The real estate is back. In certain parts, it is still down. The appraisals are down, but the tax value, the assessed value of the house is still up. So people are paying taxes at this level, but when they try to sell their home, the homes are down here. What can, if anything, do we need a reevaluation in certain neighborhoods and say this is not a true value of your house, that we need to get closer to what the appraised value as opposed to the appraised value, the assessed value, so people will know I'm paying more than what my house is really worth?
Well, I tell you, anytime you want to sell your house or your property, you want your house to be valued more than what it is. Anytime you want to pay your taxes, exactly, you're hoping it's going to be much less. So the answer to that is, if you feel that it's happened to you, I think on a case-by-case basis, you can appeal and have someone to come out. And then not necessarily the tax assessor, we do have another department that will look at that, and you can appeal too. Because I do think that some of these things just get looked at differently for certain neighborhoods that you live in, and it's not fair that the grandmama who's retired, who doesn't make as much, but her house is paid off, is paying a little bit more than others in North Macon. That we want to keep it on a level, but let them pay a little bit less. And I go back to that sometimes, and not necessarily to say this happened, but when it comes to those tax dollars and the poor versus the rich, is that Donald Trump mentality that's trickling down, and that we think that we're doing what a certain class of people want. But in essence, we're hurting the majority of our community. So you can appeal it, and you have the right to appeal it, and you have the right to go and be heard. And they will come back out and assess it. Those that can afford to hire their own assessor, you can do that as well.
Yeah. What concerns me about it, and I listen to people and realtors, especially realtors working in certain areas, the appraisers are coming in so much lower than what people think their houses are worth.
Right.
In other words, if you lived around the lake, the prices were depressed during the Great Recession, but they're back up now, even more than what they are. But yet the other neighborhoods, they're still down, but yet their assessed value. So that a lot of people, they're shocked when they get ready to sell their house. They say, well, my assessed value is $66,000, but the highest appraisal I can get over here is $45,000. And I'm trying to sell my house, and I think that's where a lot of people have their heartburn.
And also, Mr. Ellis, that comes from houses that in your area that have sold.
Exactly.
And it could have been houses that were sold during the Depression or the real estate debacle in 2008 and 9.
Exactly.
The house, this house sold for $46,000. Well, I just give an example that, a property I know was over there and people were like, oh, this houses around you only sold for $48,000, where our house was valued now at $91,000. But at the time,
they're going by those comps.
Yeah. People was looking at like, oh, I can't give you more than $48,000, and so.
And other people caught up in that, but let's talk about a little bit more. The other big thing that's happened in our city, in some of these same neighborhoods, blight has. I know you all been working on it. You had $1 million. Each one of you had $1 million, but we need a whole lot more than $1 million to deal with what we're dealing with here. Do we see any light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, and it's not a train coming at us, hopefully, do we see any light at the end of the tunnel getting rid of some of these blighted properties? Because God knows we have more than our fair share.
I must be honest when I say this. Not under this administration, I don't think. And I say that because from day one, Mayor Rickard, I know, was told by a number of folks that you can be a hero if you do something about blight. We had commissioners travel to Detroit, Michigan, so many other cities with blight initiatives that we needed at least a $40 to $50 million blight initiative. Greenville, South Carolina does it, Denver does it, meaning you can't hardly find a structure that's blighted in some of those communities, because what they did is that was their number one initiative, where if a structure was blighted, they went and either bought it, secured it, went through their land bank authority, took it by eminent domain, tore it down, or sold it and fixed it up. In addition, this Greenville, South Carolina does this, and I love this. Even old, outdated signs, business signs, they are going around taking those down. If your business is closed and you got a sign up that just needs painting or boards are torn out, they remove all of those things. The mayor has traveled to these cities. He's aware of that. So, and I asked him a few times, what's going to be your legacy? We missed it on the housing. And now I'll go back and say that a lot of these young folks did not want to live in mama and grandmama and granddaddy's house. They wanted a new house. That's sort of what happened in 2008 also now. Yeah. So a lot of these structures don't belong to the government, but people assume it's a government issue. Yeah. But these are private properties that folks have walked away from. Oh, I don't want it.
Some had lien on them.
And I tell you something else that we have to take a look at. And I'd be interested in working with you on this. We need to get this passed. A lot of these structures that have been burned, that people say, oh, we need to tear that house down and burn. Well, the property owners collected insurance. And then they left the structures and said, oh, I don't want it. Your city can have it. You do whatever. We should be able to make them go back, and the insurance commissioner should be able to tell if that house had insurance. If the owner collected the insurance, then he or she should be required to tear it down. Not allow them to walk away from it, and then commissioners and the public say, oh, y'all need to tear this house down and burn me. Nobody's looking at that. Yeah. That these folks are taking advantage. They collected the insurance on these burned down structures and walk away from them and say, oh, the city, y'all can have them. I'm going to pay taxes. And then it becomes our problem.
Well, unfortunately, the insurance commissioner himself is in jail. I understand.
he was actually resigned, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Speaking of blight, blight is not just in neighborhoods. And I commend you for working on this. The Eisenhower corridor, it could be the Montpelier corridor, it could be the Houston Avenue corridor, it could be all of our corridors where we have a lot of blight, but it had to start somewhere. You have identified the Eisenhower corridor. How is that going?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, next to Gray Highway, Eisenhower Parkway, which is Highway 80, is the second most traveled street in Macon-Bibb County government. And one of the initiatives, Mark Stevens, when I first came in office, was working on that. He worked for a bank and he was partnering with the mall. And we've been able to we started out, Commissioner Bechtel and myself, putting $150,000 into it just to clean it up. Because we know the state was only cutting the grass in the right of way once a year. And so with that initiative, we initially was trying to get a BID, a Business Improvement District, but we end up with a CID, and so that means that those people in that area,
Community Improvement District,
from I-475 all the way right down past the mall at Oglesby, where the farmers market ends.
Right.
Everybody that has a business in that structure pays an extra penny, and you can go and drive now, and you can see improvements that the middle of the right of way on both sides of the highway. The trees are torn down where you can see what's happening. We're redoing some things at exit 3. And so it's just the community and businesses coming together to improve their own community and paying a little bit extra tax. So that means that extra penny stays into that community in that district. And so right now they probably raise up to $1 million. And there's a plan now, any day now, to add 29 additional lights from I-475 to Bloomfield Road. We're adding 29 more lights. We're going to light it up like Gray Highway is lit up. And we're continuing that process to beautify it and those things, because we got to maintain those businesses there. Everything can't move to North Macon, because folks need to realize Mr. Ficklin, who's recruiting everybody. I don't have his money, and I know I shouldn't call his name, but Mr. Ficklin, these folks on our side of town deserve to have the same opportunities of life and living that those folks in North Macon have.
Well, you've called them out, Mr. Tillman. You've spoken truth to power here. We're about out of time, but let me ask you one question. Give me 30 seconds and on it, and I'll let you go. What's in your future?
I think my
politically,
my future is is to stay
engaged, hopefully
engaged, compassion to the folks of the poor and the disadvantaged, and help them continue to seek a second chance at life. I'm not interested at this time in running for mayor. I do think we need to pass the torch, even as commissioners, and uplift those that's ready to take heed and possibly do something else. I never say never, but I think I'll do something else.
Well, you've done a great job, and I want to thank you very much.
I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining us here on our program. I know you've been on TV and radio a lot, but we appreciate you being here on the Middle Georgia Spotlight. And we've been joined by Commissioner Al Tillman, who's the Mayor Pro Tem. Until next week, I'm your host, Jack Ellis. Please like us on Facebook and subscribe to Facebook, the Middle Georgia Spotlight. Until next week, I'm your host, Jack Ellis. Goodbye.